Latest research studies. First is decision-making by children and young people in the home, the nurture of trust, participation, and independence. This article presents the findings of a qualitative research study of children and young people aged 7 to 17 years in Ireland. It seeks to investigate whether, for the children and young people involved, the home is a space where supportive, trusting family relationships can be nurtured, where independence grows with age, and where parents listen, discuss, and explain decisions made. It furthermore outlines the views and experiences of parents with regard to children and young people's participation in the home, and focuses on relational and spatial aspects of child participation within the home. The study recognizes children and young people as social actors and is also informed by a relational and spatial approach to children's participation, which recognizes the perspective, roles, and positions of children in facilitating child participation. The results indicate that age and issues of trust and tokenism were significant barriers in young people's participation and decision-making at home. Key enablers of children and young people's participation included space, where discussion can happen at home, good family relationships, being listened to by parents, trust and growing levels of independence with age, and seeing decisions as fair and having the rationale for decision explained to them by parents. Among suggestions for improvements, the most important were designated family spaces for discussion, encouragement of active listening by parents, and promotion of explanation by adults of their decisions. Next is anxiety and decision-making. While the everyday decision-making of clinically anxious individuals is clearly influenced by their excessive fear and worry, the relationship between anxiety and decision-making remains relatively unexplored in neuroeconomic studies. So researchers attempt to explore the role of anxiety in decision-making using neuroeconomic approach. Across a range of neuroeconomic decision-making tasks, particularly those involving uncertainty or potential loss, a circuitry involving the amygdala, insular cortex, and prefrontal cortex has been observed. The amygdala is a key component of the brain system mediating fear and anxiety and their cognitive effects. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex is critically involved in the control of fear, and decreased prefrontal engagement is observed in trait and clinical anxiety. They proposed that the shared architecture may yield predictable effects of anxiety on decision-making. Specifically, anxiety increases the attention to negative choice options, the likelihood that ambiguous options will be interpreted negatively, and the tendency to avoid potential negative outcomes, even at the cost of missing potential gains. Importantly, the neural system enabling one to alter these maladaptive decision processes may be more difficult to engage with high anxiety. Also, they discussed the influence of anxiety upon choice, as though the response of anxious individuals to negative decision options is relatively consistent. However, this is almost certainly an overly simplistic perspective. Future neuroeconomic research examining how the regulation of anxiety influences our decisions will no doubt reveal a relationship between anxiety and choice that is both more malleable and more complex than our present understanding. They proposed that the neural circuitry supporting fear, learning regulation, may mediate and the influence of anxiety upon choice, and suggest that techniques for altering fear and anxiety may also change decisions. So those are two of the latest research studies of decision making. Thank you.
Latest research studies, decision making and reasoning. How many kinds of reasoning? Inference, probability, and natural language semantics. Daniel Lasseter, Noah D. Goldman, Stanford University, April 24, 2017. It provides a probabilistic model of reasoning with modal expressions such as necessary and plausible, informed by recent work in informal semantics of natural language, and showed that it predicts the possibility of nonlinear response patterns, which have been claimed to be problematic. The experiment modified the design of Rattle and He 2009 in order to test directly the prediction of the probability threshold model, a specific nonlinear response pattern observed. The researcher used more than 2 epistemic model expressions, including possible, likely, probable, uncertain, in addition to plausible and necessary. The inclusion of additional model vocabulary could allow them to observe more than the 2 modes of reasoning studied in previous work. Researcher maintained other relevant features of the design of Trillo and He 2009, including the division of arguments into a contingent condition and the 2 valid conditions, namely identity and inclusion. It was stated that Trillo's and Hertz's terminology are contingent arguments were invalid, and our identity and inclusion arguments were sometimes aggregated as valid. The researcher avoided the term invalid here because it sometimes connotes a normative judgment to the effect that such arguments ought to be rejected. Note also that the researcher do not intend to make any claims about the ecological validity of somewhat odd identity arguments or theoretical claims about whether reasoning is involved. 500 participants were recruited using Amazon Mechanical Turk platform with a restriction to participate located in the United States. They were compensated over participation. Overall, there were 3 argument types: contingent, identity, and inclusion, and 7 modal frames: no modal, possible, plausible, likely, probable, necessary, certain. Also, the properties used in arguments were chosen from a list of 21 unfamiliar biological and pseudo-biological properties adopted from Oceron, such as the use of enzymes B32 to digest food, have sesamoid bones, have a blood pH of 7.9, and use of acetylcholine as neurotransmitter. The properties used in the arguments were chosen from a list of 21 unfamiliar biological and pseudo-biological properties adopted, such as use enzymes B32 to digest food, as sesamoid bones, have a blood of pH of 79, and use of acetylcholine as a neurotransmitter. No property was seen twice by any participants. Participants saw 21 arguments, one with each target property in randomized order. Each participants saw each modal frame 3 times. 3 blocks were generated for each participant, with 1 modal frame occurring in each block in random order. The researcher considered data only from the 484 participants who reported that their native language was English. The researcher removed the data from 44 participants who gave the same question to all questions, as well as 196 individual trials in which subject respondents were quickly less than 3.5 seconds. Arguments types were assigned to trials such that each participant saw 16 contingent, 2 identity, and 2 inclusion arguments, and 1 additional argument to fill out the 3 blocks of modal frames, which was contingent 80% of the time, identity 10%, and contingent 10%. And that's all. Thank you.